Welcome to Successful Living with Bill Napick. Every week we talk about success and everything that goes along with it. You'll learn the principles of success, how to achieve success, and learn to overcome challenges that may be getting in the way of success in your life. You'll hear from Bill Napick, a radio personality and business development expert, along with insight from special guests. If you're ready to find your path to success or take the success you're enjoying to the next level, stay tuned. Successful Living with Bill Napick is on right now.
And welcome to the show, Successful Living with Bill Napick, and that is me, and also Successful Living with John Stanley. He is the worship administrator at Second Baptist, our Woodway campus right here in Houston, Texas. In addition, he is a music composer, arranger, producer, and now an author. John, that's a lot of things, and that's all on a Monday too, right?
Right. Yeah.
So welcome to the show, John.
Thank you.
And as I said, you are an author. People here in Houston know you in the music community, members of our church most certainly. Let's tell people now you've written a book, which is a major undertaking in your life, very exciting. Let's tell them the name of the book and the inspiration to write it.
Yeah, so the name of the book, it's called Surrender. And man, the inspiration to write it began years ago, and I won't belabor the whole of the story. I'll try to make it as short as possible, but essentially, God put it on my heart to write a book. I had no idea where to start, no idea what I was doing. English was my worst subject in school. And so I just began praying about what to do and how to bring that idea together of just even a book. And basically, through my whole path of life, God has taught me so much about what surrender means and following Him and following Christ as our guide. And as soon as He kind of brought that thought pattern into my mind, things began to form and develop and become what the book is now, essentially. And so it took a long time to pull it all together. It took a total of about 7 years to bring it all together from start to finish, and I'm so excited about it because I think it's a message our world really needs, and especially believers and followers of Christ, to step up and to say, "Man, I follow Jesus, and this is how we walk in this life and surrender. And no matter what circumstance life brings up, we lay it down."
Indeed, and that word surrender does say so much about what needs to be done, and also it's very important. Great that you have captured it, and as I mentioned in introducing you, you do so many things, and all those things. First of all, that's a full-time job at Second Baptist. You're a family man, children, so you're very busy. But it's interesting too when you're called, when the Lord puts something on your heart that somehow time, you either make the time or it happens. How did you find time to do something that's such a big project?
Yeah, great question. And, I sometimes wonder myself how in the world all this even came together. But God is so gracious to finish what He started. And so at first, when I started throwing ideas around, I would just kind of do it, in the early evenings as soon as I got home from work. But eventually, once I signed with an agent and started really making progress on the chapters, it literally became, because of what time, my job starts at 2nd, and then the things that I do in the evening with family, the only time that I could really devote time to writing was in the morning. So I would wake up at 4 a.m. and start writing at 4. And I would do that for about 2 hours, and then I would have a devotional time. And then once 7 o'clock hit, I'd put everything away and just devote time to helping get my kids breakfast and wake up the family and get everything ready, and then get ready for work and head on to work. And then it kind of became a pattern there for a long time of doing that. And man, those are early mornings, and once you get into the evening hours, you start really dragging, but God's gracious enough to give you the strength whenever you need it. So it was a joy to do, and it was a very neat time with the Lord and myself at that time.
And also, I'm an early riser, but not a 4 o'clock riser. However, I do find that when there's something special about those early hours, in terms of, now I've not written a book, but there's something special about that early time as far as inspiration and being able to get ideas.
Right.
So that probably was a benefit.
Yeah, and silence is really key in all of that, and being able to have that time to be able to craft chapters and whatnot. Silence is really golden, and so to be able to have have those times in the early morning hours when nobody's up and you're just sitting there and you're digging in the Word and you're writing thoughts down, and then the form of the chapter begins to take shape, and then you just begin to unfold it from there. But I actually touch on that in the book a little bit, because I talk about how beautiful silence really is, because of how important it is to us continuing on in whatever God's called us to do, and silence is a big part of that, and having silence.
And as you were writing the book in those early hours and getting thoughts, I'm sure during the day, maybe writing a few notes down, who are the people that you were thinking about as you wrote this, or the circumstances of the people that need the ideas in your book? Who were you thinking about?
That's a great question. A lot of this stemmed from looking at a world where you see a lot of suffering, you see a lot of hurt, and you see a lot of people asking questions. And so a lot of the book stemmed from that. And I really, really hit heavy on the book on a chapter in chapter 9, which is probably honestly one of the best chapters in the book, but it's called Surrender and Suffering. And it is essentially not a lot of my writing. I interviewed two ladies who were very special in my life, my wife and my mother, who have both been through insurmountable amounts of suffering in their lives, and who still stand to proclaim that God is faithful. My mom lost her family, her entire family, her mom and her dad and her grandmother at the age of 9 in a car wreck, and she was the only one that survived. And then my wife, her story of her journey through intense physical pain, struggles that she deals with and still deals with today. They, at some point in their lives, just thought God had abandoned them and that he was done with them. And it was through surrender that they rediscovered a rejuvenating, refreshing outlook on their faith and what life in Christ really means when you surrender in faith, even though you don't understand that total abandonment to God isn't circumstantial. It's a freedom in a relationship there for someone, a creator who created us, who loves us more than we can even fathom or imagine, and holds us in his arms and cares for us at such a deep level. And it's looking at our world today, and not even knowing when I first began the process, all the endeavors that we would go through politically. And I mean, we've seen so much happen in the last 7 years.
It's unbelievable.
Seriously, and a rise in fear, a rise in terror, a rise in suffering. I don't remember that when I first started writing this book to that degree, and it seems to be intensified. And so now, as believers, we have to look at the world that we're walking in and go, what does surrender really mean? And hopefully this book really encourages and inspires people to do that in a way that allows us to become such a beacon and such a witness of who Christ is in our lives. We're the first Bible that people are going to read whenever we meet them. And no matter what scenario, no matter what circumstance we walk into in life, no matter who we meet, I've gotten a privilege to do some incredible things in the church world, but also in the secular world. And I've found, especially in the secular world, people want authenticity, and they want it. They're searching for it, and they want us to be authentic. They don't want us to hide behind something, because we live in a world where so many authorities that we look to as authorities have fallen because of deception, because of lies, because of inauthenticity, and they've been discovered. And surrender is all about being the most real, authentic you that God created you to be as you dig into a relationship with Jesus, who is your creator. And as he created you to dig into that relationship, you will be the most real, authentic you. That's the most real you will be ever.
And it's interesting as you talk about these 7 years, how in the last few years, it seems like the crazy things that happen and the texture of the world, both from a political standpoint, the events that take place right here, miles away from where we live and all over the United States, they've become the norm.
Right.
And really, and then you take that, and then you also say that people are out there. We all have had struggles. If you live long enough, you're going to have all kinds of things to struggle. And it's also a word to be prepared for those struggles, to know that when things are good, and you said the key word is having that relationship with Christ.
Right.
When things are good and you have that relationship, that's great.
Right.
But when that challenge comes, you have to have that relationship as well. The relationship goes beyond our life here. But while we're here, that relationship with Jesus is so important.
Yeah, it's so foundational. It is so foundational. And when the very bedrock of what you believe your life to be falls out from under you, like with my mom, it was her family, and with my wife, it was literally her physical body felt like it was just falling apart. And when those very things fall out from under you, what are you looking to hold on to? And they looked to Jesus, even in anger, even in despair. And you meet them today, you would never, ever know immediately, because they are so joyful and they are such joy-filled individuals. It's amazing. And so, so surrender, I hope, not every chapter is about that kind of intense suffering, but a lot of it deals with obedience. What does that look like whenever we surrender? What does obedience to Jesus really mean? Does it mean just obey whenever things look good? Or does it mean obey whenever you're looking into, like, at a cliff and you're going, so I'm supposed to jump, and what's supposed to happen? And it's just black, and that's all you see. So it deals with that kind of, those kind of struggles and those kind of walks in life. So hopefully it touches on every circumstance, what surrendering in Christ really does look like, and how it can be joyful and so fulfilling and satisfying.
And we are talking with John Stanley. He is the author of the book called Surrender. And John, I like the caption below it, Surrender. And it says, learning to navigate life's deep waters with Christ as your guide.
Right.
That's great to have it summed up like that.
Right.
And so exciting. Also, let's tell people, as they listen to this, the book is now emerging and is going to be available. Let's tell them where they'll be able to get this book.
Absolutely, yeah. It's actually available for pre-order right now, and you can go to my publisher's website, which is clcpublications.com, and you can buy it there. But it's also available on Amazon, and all you have to do is type in John Stanley Surrender, and it'll pull right up. It will be available on christianbooks.com as well, and then it'll also be available on Kindle and things like that. So, and then, you're always welcome to reach out to me through my website or through whatnot if you want a copy, and I can even send you one myself. Maybe if you want it signed or whatnot, I can do that as well.
You can get the digital copy and also the paperback copy, and that's what I'm going to get so you can sign it. Because I see you enough to it's like, hey, Johnson, maybe you'll have to sign it twice, but that's going to be exciting. We'll go back to the book in a minute, but before we get too far into the show, I want to tell people, I said at the beginning, you are so gifted as a musician and all the things you do, because you're a leader at Second Baptist, and I'm involved in the music ministry, and you do such a tremendous job leading.
Oh, thank you.
And right there, leadership is so important, but you do so many things, and you're a percussionist extraordinaire, to say the least. But even the people that work with you sometimes don't realize the other musical capabilities, and we're going to hear some of that right now. But let's tell people about some of the things you do as far as composing, arranging, and you don't just play the drums. I've seen you at the keyboard, and I'm getting scared. I said, wait a minute, if he starts playing too well.
No, not nearly as qualified as you on the keys at all. Man, I get the wonderful opportunity of getting to do music composition inside and outside the church. And a lot of the stuff that I've gotten to do inside the church has really equipped me and prepared me for a lot of the stuff that I've gotten to do outside the church. Just recently, I've come into some really neat things out in L.A. and gotten to work on some really neat stuff coming up at a very unique level, what I would say is a very high level, with some very amazing musicians out there that are at the top of the level there in LA. And so I'm getting to do some neat compositional work through that, which also really enhances and brings an enhancement and kind of fine-tunes my skill and what I get to do at Second as well. And so it's, as a composer, as a arranger, and a lot of it, the majority of it, that I'm getting to do out there in LA is big orchestral stuff. So we're talking, big full orchestra type of compositions that are catered to film score type stuff. So it's really neat.
Well, John, we have a short clip here. Let's tell people what they're going to hear and a little bit about how you put it together, and then we'll play it.
Yeah, real quick. So this is something that we did for the church, and it's actually coming up. This is an event going on at the church called the Passion Week Experience at all of our 6 campuses, and it's going to be starting out next week, and it goes from 9 a.m. to 9. It goes from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the church, and it's going to start on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, and it's a Passion Week experience. It's an incredible, moving experience, an event. You get to walk through the steps of Christ right before he died and what that looked like. And so this music that you're going to hear was built around a more or less quote-unquote trailer that was built for that event. And a guy named Andrew Nix, who kind of oversaw all this, just asked if I would create some incredibly dynamic music that had some depth and some tension, but victory built into it, that they could use and build this trailer around to it. And so I said, yeah, I would love to do that. And so I got to go in and just use the compositional skills and build a big orchestral trailer piece to this, and it was a lot of fun.
And let's hear it right now. And I like what you said, those elements of tension, and it's almost like a seasoning of putting together a great chef would do, and the victory was there.
Right.
I mean, how do you even begin a project like that, John?
Honestly, with something like that, every project that I begin, no matter what kind of world I'm in, whether it's in the sacred or in the secular, I always begin it with prayer. And I always ask the Lord for the inspiration. And so, and I'm not kidding, every time I do that, and I'm Proverbs 16:3, commit to the Lord whatever you do and your plans will succeed. Committing that to the Lord and going, okay, inspire me. You're the creator. You are the ultimate creator. So create through me. And from that point, ideas start coming, and sometimes it can start with a string line, just a simple string line or a simple little melodic line that runs in my brain, and then I start thinking, oh, this would be cool to add this, and then all of a sudden just the layers kind of start coming in together, from that. But yeah, and also to let people know, it is at Second Baptist Woodway, and then from Second Baptist Woodway we also have our West Campus, our North, our South, and our Cypress as well that you can be involved in 1463 as well and walk.
So many great things going on at our church. I have to pinch myself when I go in there on the weekend because
Right.
it's really unbelievable.
Right.
And the talent that we have, people like yourself and the people that are helping in the media and all
Yes.
that, it's God has put some of the best minds there, and not individually, working as a team is what makes it work.
Yeah, oh man.
And there's no one person. It's that teamwork makes this dream work.
Yeah, I seriously, some of the talent we have at Second, I literally stand back and look and just go, wow, we've got some of the best in the world here. And I really do believe that. I don't just say that, just throwing that out there. These guys are unbelievable. And so to get to work with them as a team and just, all the way across the board in our worship ministry with Joel, who is unbelievable himself as an arranger. And we always say the genius of Joel,
Joel Mott, we're speaking of, by the way. And Joel, we're hoping you're listening too.
Yeah. But then, just that whole team that we have in our music department with Megan and Allie and Joe Lou and Josh Smith, who works in there now with us, and Jeff Anderson, who's a member of Veritas now, is in there with us as an artist in residence. And, just that team together, and it's just world class, just all the way across the board, just unbelievable individuals that we get to work with. And
And going back to the music we heard, backtracking, John, as far as the percussion elements of it, as a percussionist, and that's your main musical instrument, what are some of the things you were thinking about there? Because it has such a gigantic sound to it, like a movie score of a movie with a lot of people in it too. Right. A lot of things going on.
Yeah, and you can actually look at that trailer on Facebook. It's on Facebook on our Second Baptist Facebook page, Second Baptist Houston Woodway. It's on that Facebook site, but it's on our main page.
It's
as
incredible.
Well. Yeah, really good job. The artwork of Steven Skadal. But I thought depth, tension, victory, war. That was my main thought behind it. So I went in and started pulling together some war type sounding drums, and then really kind of begin to build it from there. And that's, as a percussionist and drummer, those things kind of drive that kind of sound, and so that was a big pull, is those war drums. And then to think depth, victory, and there's all of that involved in war. There's tension, there's victory, and there's depth.
Interesting, making me think of musical instruments and the history of musical instruments. Drums have been around. They may have been the first instruments because early man probably had a reason or two to hit a rock against something, a stick against something.
I think we should just go with that.
There you go.
forever.
There's no question about it. So all instruments have a great histories, but percussion
Right.
is so fascinating. And quite frankly, that other than as people grow up, I'm going to guess in my generation when we grew up, we wanted to be drummers or guitar players. And I think that may still be the
That's
most
right.
popular
That is
thing right
right.
now. But who knows?
That's right.
Give us a word, John, of what else is coming out. Or tell them another, with the last few minutes here, as far as the book goes. What would you want someone to take away from this book, and how can remind them how it can help anybody out there?
Yeah, so I think the biggest takeaway that I hope people really do take away from this book is that in living a surrendered life and all that Christ commands us, and doing so with reckless abandon. I use a biblical example of Abraham and the sacrifice of Isaac, and the fact that in the scriptures it's told to us that he got up early the next morning, that he got the command from God to go do that. He got up early and with reckless abandon. He did not wait. He got up early and he went. He did not wait for the afternoon. He just did it immediately. And then as followers of Jesus, to be so bold to do that, and whatever he asks. Like for me, writing a book, I didn't want to write a book, Bill. And to write a book on surrender, that's a hard subject. So I wasn't really crazy about writing that kind of book. Those acts of surrender, I mean, you just don't know what God's going to do through that. And we don't know what he's going to do with the seeds that he plants. All we need to do is to be obedient and keep walking. And when the doors of opportunity open and God continues to confirm, we've got to continue to move forward. And that's what I hope people find inspiration with in this book of surrender.
And we're talking with the author of the book called Surrender. He is John Stanley. And also, I think, John, right off the bat, the book is helpful because by simplifying this complex life, this challenging life, and even this joyful life,
Right.
that one word is one. It is very helpful as we go forth, just to remember and then to open the pages and find even more the resources that you provided there. John, let's tell people the website again and how they can get the book Surrender.
Yeah, so again, clcpublications.com, Amazon, christianbooks.com, but then I also have my own website, which is johnstanleymusic.com, and there's a place down there where you can reach out if you'd ever like to regarding music or the book and other things like that. So feel free to hit one of those up. Go out and get the book and dive into it and let the Lord speak to you through it.
Also, in reading the press, I like the endorsements you got from people as notable as Matt Stanley. How about that guy? And the one and only Jeremy Good and so many others.
Yeah.
And also, I will say this, if there's any youngsters or oldsters out there that want to play drums or learn about percussion, go to John's website. He's got some clips there. He is a killer percussionist, to say the least.
That.
One more time, the website, John?
johnstanleymusic.com.
Thank you so much, John Stanley, and the author of the book Surrender. Check it out, johnstanley.com, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to Successful Living with Bill Nampick, and today, John Stanley. Thank you, John.
Thank you.